Hi everyone, it's me Spring, the fiber enthusiast, and welcome to my channel. So for today's tutorial, we're going to be making this child size hooded cowl, and you can adjust the size in this to an adult size. Very easy to make, and yeah, it doesn't take much yarn at all. This is what I have left over from one cake of Burnett Pop, and I did this whole thing with it. Now, of course, if you do an adult size, you're going to use more yarn. And if you use, larger yarn, all that other stuff, things will change. But for this particular hooded cowl for a child, I used this. Now, if you have one of these Burnett Pops laying around and you're like, what do I do with it? Here you go. Simple child size crocheted cowl, hooded cowl. It's by Yarnspirations. And the other specs on it are, it is 5 ounces, 140 grams, 280 yards, or 256 meters. It is 100% acrylic, and it is a 4-weight. Now, it is a little bit heavier of a 4-weight, must say, but I do love this yarn. It is so super soft. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way. We will be starting with the cowl section. And what will you need? You'll need some yarn. For the cowl section, I'm using a solid Caron Simply Soft. And for the hood part, I will be using a variegated fall colors. A pair of scissors, a needle, some stitch markers just in case. And I suggest using 2 different hook sizes. One for your starting chain, which is quite a bit larger. Mine that I will be using is a size 6 for my starting chain. Then I'm going to drop down to a size 5. Now I'm going to switch over to a zoomed in view so that way you can see what I'm up to once we get past our chain. Now, your chain is going to be in multiples of 16 plus 1. Now, the cowl part is worked in the flat and sewn together in the round. So we're going to make like we're making a scarf, which you could totally do if you wanted to. But that's a whole nother different tutorial. You just keep going. So at any rate, yeah, we're working in the flat and sewing it together in the round. So this direction is the direction that we're working. That is your height. So I'm going to start with a chain of 33. That is the multiples of 16 plus 1. So go ahead and chain your height, which would be 33 chains. Now make sure that your chain is slightly on the loose side because we are going to be working into those back bumps of your chain. Okay, so I now have my 33 chains. I'm going to switch hooks, and now I'm done with my 6mm. Moving back down to a 5. All right, so we're going to turn our chain on its side so that way we can see those back bumps of our chain. You're going to work a cluster of 2 together double crochet, starting in the 3rd bump from your hook. So 3rd chain from your hook, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to yarn over and go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. Yarn over insert your hook into the next bump, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through 2. You now have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through all 3. Now you're going to place 1 double crochet into the next 5 stitches, again using those back bumps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to make our peak. So the point, so we need to increase. We are decreasing to draw it up together for the valley. So we're making peaks and valleys. We're going to draw it together and decrease over so many stitches for the valley. But for the peaks, we need to increase. So we're going into the next stitch and we're going to place all of the following into the next stitch. 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. So double crochet into this next stitch, double crochet 2, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets all into that very same stitch. Now you're simply going to place 1 double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, just as we did before that peak. So 1, once you get past, your first row, it makes it a little bit easier. So there's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. So now you can see we have this peak by that increase that we did in that 1 stitch where we added so many stitches. Now we're going to do our decrease, and our decrease is worked over the next 5 stitches. We're going to do a cluster of 5 double crochets together. So just like we did at the beginning, you're going to yarn over and insert your hook into the next stitch. Then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through 2 loops only. And you're going to do that 4 more times. You will have a total of 6 loops on your hook. One more. So I now have my very first loop from the last stitch made prior to working these together. And then I have 5 loops from my 5 starts of double crochets. Now we're going to complete that and create a cluster by yarning over and going through all 6 loops, just like that. Now you're going to place 1 double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to work that increase again into the next stitch. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets all into the next stitch. 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets. Now all you're going to do is work 1 double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's going to leave you with 2 stitches remaining. We are now going to cluster them together. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2. Yarn over, go into your next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2. You have 3 loops on your hook. If you remember, this is how we started the row. Yarn over, go through all 3. Chain 3 and turn your work. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to start our repeat row. Okay, so for your repeat row, here we go. We have our chain 3. You're going to yarn over and we're going to cluster 2 together. That is going to be our next 2 stitches, not the stitch that you now have a chain 3 from. Let's go ahead and look a little closer to make sure that we're getting that right stitch. All right, so here we have our chain, and as you see, it is coming off of this cluster right here. So this is our very first stitch. We're skipping that one. We're going to be working over the next 2 stitches. So yarn over and insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. You're going to do that one more time. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. You now have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through all 3. Place 1 front post double crochet around each of the next 5 double crochets. So you yarn over and go behind the post like that. Then you yarn over and pull that yarn through from behind. Yarn over and complete your double crochet. Let's do that up close and personal one more time. So a front post double crochet, you're going to yarn over and you're going to pick up that post so that way it's riding on top of your crochet hook. And then you yarn over and pull that through and double crochet. Yarn over, go through 2, yarn over and go through 2. Go ahead and front post double crochet your next 3 stitches. Once you have 5 front post double crochets, you should be at your chain 1 space from the previous row. We're going to do that increase because this is a peak. It is your chain 1 space. You're going to place into that chain 1 space 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. So 1, 2, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets, all in that same chain 1 space. Now you're going to front post double crochet over the next 5 stitches. Once you have completed that, you have 5 stitches front post double crochets on this side, your increase for your peak, and 5 double crochets down the opposite side. Now we need to make our valley, which we cluster together. So we're going to be working over the next 5 stitches. Yarn over, go into your next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 only. Find your next stitch, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 only. Yarn over, and you'll see where this cluster is here of all these loops that kind of go in like a half moon almost, crescent shape. You're going to go into the very top 2 loops just as a stitch here. Just like that. And go through 2. We need to do 2 more stitches. Yarn over, find your next stitch, and yarn over, go through 2. Yarn over, find your next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2. You should now have a total of 6 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through all 6. Now you're going to front post double crochet the next 5 stitches. This is your repeat. Then you do your increase in your chain 1 space, 5 front post double crochets down to the last 3 stitches. Let's do this one more time. Front post double crochet the next 5 stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we're at the chain 1 space. 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, all in that chain 1 space. Five front post double crochets, so 1 front post double crochet around each of the next 5 stitches. This will leave us with 3 stitches left. So we have 1, 2, and then the top of that very first cluster. We are going to cluster those together. So yarn over and insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. You're going to do that 2 more times. You will have a total of 4 loops on your hook. You will now yarn over and pull through all 4 loops and chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and you'll turn your work over and repeat the exact same thing as you just did. That is your repeat row. You're going to continue repeating that same row over and over again until the length, when folded together, meets the circumference that you choose. My approximate length was 19 inches before I sewed it together. I'm going to add the repeats that you need right in here for your Burnette pop. And then down here, I will add in the repeats that you need if you're using something similar to Karen's Simply Soft, where it is just slightly thinner than your Burnette pop. Go ahead and make note of that. I will also put it down in the description box. Okay, so go ahead and continue on with your repeats. Once we have all of our repeats complete, I will come back, we will sew it together, and start on the hood part of this hooded cowl. Okay, so for this one, I have completely finished the length that I want. So when I sew it together, I have a decent sized circumference. Now I'm going to go ahead and measure this one so that way you can see the difference between the Burnette Pop and the Karen Simply Soft. I'm going to measure from the tip in the center to about the tips on the other side, just so that way you can kind of see here. So here we are. And it's about 19.5 inches. Okay, so I'm at the end down here. Now, we look very similar on both sides because we repeated the same pattern every single row. So each side looks very, very similar. You choose a side and go with it. I'm going to go ahead and lace up my needle here so that way I can sew in the end. But in doing so, I'm going to be sewing the 2 ends together. What you're going to do is bring over each of your ends to match each other. And if you notice, it's like a puzzle piece. There is 3 points on that side and 2 on this side, and we're sewing them together. And I'm going to do that with what I call a whip stitch, which I just pulled that stitch out. Hang on. There we go. I'm going to do what I call a whip stitch. Others may call it a mattress stitch, or, you know, there's different names for it. I personally call it a whip stitch because you're whipping around and around and around. So I'm going to go through, and what I'm going to be doing is matching up my corners. Let me zoom in so that way you can see what I'm doing. So I have this corner is finished here, and now I have inserted my needle into the very corner over here, which, you know, because there's your tail thread from your starting chain. Okay, so what we're doing is just pulling them together. And now to secure that location, I'm just gonna do one more stitch. I'm gonna come up through the bottom of the last stitch made and make another loop through, just to kind of give a good sturdy edge there. Now what we're going to do is very, very simple. Get that tail out of the way. You're going to go to your next stitch and pick your next stitch up. Go directly across here to the very next stitch on the opposite side, picking up both legs on both sides. Pull your yarn all the way through, and then you're going to continue working down, picking up your very next stitch, both legs, and the very next stitch on the opposite side, both legs, and just whip that yarn around. Your very next stitches will work all the way into this corner, and I'll show you. You should be matching up into the corner if you are going directly across from one side to the other. So we're just going to continue working every stitch directly across from each other. Okay, so now we're coming down here to the very corner, and you pick up that corner, and you're going to go through this eye, which would be the bottom of that valley. So you're picking up the peak and attaching it to your valley. Now I'm going to go through that peak eye on the opposite side one more time and back through the valley eye, just to give it stability, because that is a chain space. It's not a stitch like your double crochets are down here. So I want to give it a little extra security. And you just continue working through each stitch all the way to the very end down here, matching up your two corners to the best of your ability. You know what you have at the start of your very last row. You have a chain 3. So what you would do is go into the top of your chain 3 on that side, and then to the top of your chain 3 on this side. Okay, so we're just going to continue working every stitch from one side to the other and whip stitching them together, both ends together. And after you have done that, we will start working on the hood to our hooded cowl. All right, so I have sewn all the way across. And what you can do at this point, once you have reached the end, is give it a slight tug and work those stitches so that way it's kind of symmetrical. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of a difference, but not much. So if you just pull on the tail and scooch those stitches across your tail that you just stitched all the way through, it will cinch it down and you can even stuff out in that manner. All right, so we are done with the cowl for this moment. We can just set that aside and grab whatever yarn you're going to use for the hood. I actually worked the two pieces separately and then sewn the hood to the cowl. That way I can get it adjusted how I wanted it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the hood section. And how I did this on the original was I chained from the bottom of my cowl to the top. And in this case, it was 23 chains. Now in this case, it'll probably be different. So that's how I did it to work for this one. What I'm gonna do is a slip knot on my hook, and I'm gonna start chaining. So I will chain quietly. Okay, so I am at 23 chains at this present moment, and it actually isn't that far off. Surprisingly, I mean, you can see it is a little bit, but not much, the distance of this loop that's on my hook. So I'm going to chain a couple of more and see where I'm at, 24 and 25. And this is not stretched out. It's just laying flat and laying that chain on top of the cowl. And now we are in a better position at 25. I'm pretty happy with that. So for the Caron Simply Soft, I'm chaining 25. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain one more, and then I'm going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So just single crochet. And at this point, I'm not using the back loops. I'm just using the side, the regular V legs of the stitch. So I single crocheted in that stitch one time. I'm going to do it one more time. So 2 single crochets in the second stitch from your hook. And then you're going to place 1 single crochet all the way down the side of your chain. 1 single crochet in each of the remaining chains. Go ahead and do that, and I will tell you what to do next. Okay, so I have placed 1 single crochet all the way to the end. Now I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And I'm going to place a single crochet back into that very same stitch. And 1 single crochet all the way to where we have 2 single crochets into the same chain at the other end. So go ahead and do that. You're working your way back. And again, if you are making an adult size, all you have to do is exactly what I just did with this chain and make it as long as you want. The crown, let me just show you the back of the hat. Its construction is a few rows of increases at the top here. And then once you have a nice increase, a nice curve to the top, you just start working your way out. But to start with, we're working single crochets to get this center started. And you just work the same way for an adult, you're just making it a hair bigger. Okay, so I'm down here back at the beginning where I have the 2 single crochets into the same stitch. I'm going to put 2 single crochets into my next stitch. Now I have 1 more to work. I'm going to place 1 single crochet into that stitch. And now I'm going to show you a little something different. So as you've seen, we have quite a bit on this side of the chain, but not so much on this side. We're not going to work down this side in single crochet. Instead, we're going to work down this side in half double crochet. So into your very next stitch, you're going to place 2 half double crochets. So it looks very similar in size on both sides of the chain. Now you're going to work down this side of the chain, placing 1 half double crochet in every stitch. And I'll show you once again. So now you can see it's very similar in size around this chain. Not exact, but a lot closer than if we just did a single crochet. So that's why I'm doing that. Go ahead and place 1/2 double crochet in each of your remaining stitches down the side. I'll meet up with you at the very end and show you what to do next. Okay, so I've finished my last 1/2 double crochet into that last stitch. Go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work over. And you're going to place 1/2 double crochet in every stitch all the way to where you have the 2 1/2 double crochets to your second one that's in the same stitch there. You're going to place 1/2 double crochet in every stitch all the way to that second 1/2 double that's in the same stitch at the very end down here. I'll meet up with you down here and show you what to do next. Okay, so I'm down at the very last stitch at the end, which we had 2 single crochets on one side and 2 1/2 doubles on the other side, and 1 stitch by itself in the center. We're going to place 3 1/2 double crochets in that single stitch in the center, and that is going to be our increase. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And now we're simply going to place 1/2 double crochet all the way down to the very last stitch on the opposite side. Okay, so I've come down to my last stitch on that side, and I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and place 1/2 double crochet all the way back up to this point. Now, we have those 3 1/2 double crochets in the very center here. This will be our last increase. You're going to place 2 1/2 double crochets in the first stitch. Then you're going to 1/2 double crochet in the next one, and 2 1/2 double crochets in the following. That's how you will work over those 3 stitches that are in the 1 stitch at the very end. So 2 1/2 doubles, 1 1/2 double, 2 1/2 doubles. Once I get to that point, I will come back and show you how I work across those in person. Okay, so I'm now at those 3 1/2 double crochets that are in the stitch at the very end of this row. And in the very first stitch, I'm going to put 2 1/2 double crochets. In the next stitch, I'm putting 1 1/2 double crochet. And in the next stitch, I'm placing 2 1/2 double crochets. Now I'm just going to simply work 1 1/2 double crochet to the end of this row. Okay, so I have come to the end of the row. Now each row will be as followed. Chain 1, turn your work, and place 1 1/2 double crochet in every stitch from this side all the way around to this side. Repeat. Chain 1, turn your work, and 1/2 double all the way. Now I'm going to zoom back out and show you how I gauged how many rows I needed. What I did was I laid my cowl down in, and as I worked on my hood, I would fold it in half, exactly in half, and place it above my cowl. And that way I knew when it got close to the end, where I have just a small opening there, that it was time to stop. Whether I had to stop or keep going depended on, you know, where I was as I checked to see the difference between the cowl and the hood. Now, remember, when you do start to crochet or stitch your hood to your cowl, it is going to stretch out a little bit because of these front post stitches. Give it the accordion effect going on. So there is a lot of give to this particular pattern. So when you start sewing it together, it is going to stretch just a hair because you're getting every stitch, which you want it to stretch. So that way it easily goes over the head and doesn't get too tight from where you sewed the two together. So that is how I continually check to see where I'm at and how much further I need to go. So that is all there is to the hood. Go ahead and continue working your half double crochets, chain one, half double crochets, chain one, half double crochet, and so on and so forth until you have your desired width across from the back of the hood to the front of the hood, matching it up with your cowl. Then we will stitch the two together and finish this project off. I'll be back when my hood is to the point of stitching it to the cowl. Okay, so I have finished my hood, and where I started the chain, I'm matching up with the end of my cowl where I sewed the two pieces together. So those two ends are going to meet up together. Now, here's, as much as I don't like sewing things together, this was the easiest and fastest way to do it. And you can do it where you're connecting each and every row, but this is just how I did it for this particular pattern. So anyway, I'm going to stitch marker those two ends together. Where both the tails are, let me get in camera better. I'm just going to stitch mark them together. That will kind of hold it in place. And then once I have that lined up, I'm going to move across, and I'm going to take a couple more stitch markers, and I'm going to place one somewhere close to the end, just to kind of give it something to hang on to here. So I've got a pretty good idea as to how much movement I've done when I was working on it. Now I'll just flip it over and do the same thing on this side with another stitch marker somewhere close to the end here. And that'll just give me some security as to they're pretty even on both sides. All right, so now what you're gonna do is you can sew this like a whip stitch, like we did when we sewed the cowl together. Or you could slip stitch it. That is entirely up to you. I'm going to do like we did the cowl and whip stitch it all the way around. And then when I come to the end, I'm going to do a little bit of single crocheting. So you're going to need quite a long tail. Generally what I do is I measure like 3 to 4 times from side to side, and that usually gets me pretty close to what I need. A rough estimate. Spring science, I guess, is what I would call it. And then I'm just going to cut away from the ball of yarn so I don't have to argue with it. And now I'm going to lace up my needle, and I still have my loop here. So I'm going to go through that loop, which is my last stitch, and cinch it down like that. So what I'm gonna do is the same exact steps that we did for sewing the cowl together, we're gonna do here. We're gonna go from one side straight over to the opposite side, meaning our cowl. So we're gonna pick up a stitch on our cowl, and I am going to go back through that last stitch that I made on the hood and back through that same stitch that I just worked on the cowl. That way I'm just kind of given a little bit more security right there, and when I come back around, I will tighten this back up just a hair. So again, all you're going to be doing is going through one stitch and coming back through the other side, just like that. And every so often, give it just a little bit of a snug, not very much. You want this to have some give to it. And just work your way all the way around. Just like such, and then just give it a little bit of a snug to kind of get everything nice and neat across as you go. And I do it every so many stitches, you know, count 5 or whatever, and just kind of tighten them up a little bit as you go. So I'm gonna meet you at this end, meet up with you down at this end. You've made it all the way around the hood, and I'll show you how we're going to finish this off and call it good. All right, so I have made my way all the way around, just whipping around, and I have a little bit of tail left. And now all I'm going to do is single crochet across to this other side where we started, using my tail, my leftover tail. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the last stitch over here from my hood and pull through like that. And then I'm going to go into this first stitch here and pull through. Then I'm going to single crochet, and I'm going to work across this little section, just place in a few single crochets just to kind of clean up the edge. So just to clean up the edge, just placing one single crochet every so often, just a few of them. Okay, so now I'm at this other side over here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm doing a single crochet decrease. I'm pulling a loop up through there, and now I'm going to go into my last stitch on the hood and pull up a loop. So I'm doing a decrease in that corner and pulling through all of them. And then I'm just going to pull the rest of that yarn tail through. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew in my tails and come back and show you what it looks like completely finished. All right, so I have all my ends sewn in and took some pictures on the mannequin head so that way you could see it completely finished and how nice and close it fits around the head, around the chin. There's plenty of extra room, like the mannequin's head is that far away. There's plenty of extra room, but it's nice around the face to help cut down on, you know, wind and stuff getting to your ears. Because I don't know about you, but I cannot stand cold air in my ears. So, into the story is, you can make the same exact thing for an adult. You just make your beginning cowl a little bit longer to your comfortable, you know, circumference, and then sew it together. Then you're going to chain up I try to do close to the same as the width of, you know, the height actually of my cowl, and then start working out. You could add a few more chains for an adult if you would like, and make it a little bit taller. That way, like if I look at it this way, once I've done the increases and we start down the side, that's about how much extra from the increases, extra height you get. And the same thing for even the Burnette Pop. There's quite a bit extra because of those increases. So keep that in mind when you're making that initial chain to start working on your hood. So overall, here is the difference. Both are supposed to be 4 weights, and there's that and that. Pretty much the same this way. But as far as the overall height, because I've matched the seams up together here, the overall height of the project is much larger with the Burnette Pop 4 weight versus your Caron Simply Soft 4 weight, using both the same hooks. So that is it for this hooded cowl. I'm really liking it, even as much as I detest sewing pieces together. I really like the ability for stretch that this has by not putting a single crochet around the edge here. By working it this direction and sewing it together, it gives it a good amount of stretch. I don't want to like severely stretch it out. And then by working the hood separately, you can kind of, you know, work through it as you need to. Of course, the Caron Simply Soft is super, super soft and squishy. If you've ever used Burnette Pop before, you know that once it's washed a couple of times, it softens up the same way. Really real soft. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions or problems working through my pattern, please feel free to contact me via email, or you can also join the Facebook group if you're not there already and ask questions there. I would love to see your project when you finish it. You can, again, send me pictures or share pictures in the Facebook group. And if you post them on Instagram, please tag me in it with a hashtag Spring the Fiber Enthusiast. Of course, all of that information will be down in the description box below. So let me know if you make this. I'd love to see it. All right, everybody, be blessed, be a blessing, and bye for now.